Okay, so today what we're going to talk about is a concept that we have learned before, but we're going to take it a step further. And so, thinking about this, we're thinking about those pesky accent marks, okay? But for those of you that are just starting Spanish, we're going to talk about something that doesn't have a lot to do with accent marks, but will affect them down the road. So what I'm going to do is we're going to go to the board and we're going to talk about some words. Okay? So stress and accent marks. So if you remember, we were saying that an accent mark is written from right to left and we place them over vowels in some words. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at a rule, and it has we're not going to really deal with the accent mark, but what we're going to say is, okay, in a word that has no accent marks, okay, and that word ends in a vowel, an N or an S, then the stress is on the second to last syllable. All right. So it kind of seems like a lot of information, but let's look at this. So, for example, we have this word. Somebody who doesn't know Spanish very well might be tempted to say fruta. Okay? So, no. What we do is it ends in a vowel, and so the stress is going to be on the letter U when we pronounce it. There is not a written accent mark, but the stress is on the U. So it should be pronounced fruta. Okay, let's look at some other examples. We have this word. The C is pronounced like the letter K. One moment. The C is pronounced like the letter K. So this word, the stress is on the first A, cama. Okay? Another word that we have is this. So we know the O sounds like O, the E sounds like E. So the stress is going to go on the O, sobre. All right. Now, what if we have more than one syllable, like this word? Okay. So it ends in a vowel. Okay. And so we know the stress is going to go on the second to last syllable, which means it will go on the first O. Therefore, the word is pronounced tampoco. Okay? Not tampoco, but tampoco. And you can sort of hear that punch on that first O. We could also have a word that you already know, and you probably know how to pronounce it, but it has 3 syllables, amigo. And the stress is on the second to last syllable, so it is pronounced amigo. Okay, amigo. All right, great. So this handles words that end in a vowel and words that maybe end in the letter N or S. We would know where to put the stress. Now, what if the word ends in a consonant that is not ending with the letter N or the letter S? What happens then? Well, if that happens, okay, the stress will go on the, sorry, one moment. the stress will go on the last syllable. So before it was second to last, now it's going on the last syllable. Let's look at some examples. All right, un momento. Just gonna move some things around here. So you have an example. All right, so let's look at some words like this. So we could have the word like this. So the word ends in an L, which is not an N or an S. And so we know that the stress is going to go on the last syllable, which will be the E. So it's pronounced papel, not papel. Papel. Okay, let's look at another example. We could have this word, which you've seen as we learned our classroom objects. So the word is pronounced reloj. Reloj. Okay, so the stress is on the O and the J sound, or the J is at the end with an H sound. Reloj. Now we could have this word, it ends in a D. All right. And there's no accent mark, but it does end in a consonant that is not an N or an S, so it's pronounced verdad. Verdad. Okay? Another word. This word does not end in an N or an S or a vowel, so it's pronounced pared. Pared. Okay? The next word ends in an R. The stress goes on the O. Mejor. Okay? So, the reason we're learning these things and the purpose of this exercise is how are we going to know where to put the accent marks in Spanish? So, the first step to doing that is looking at the syllables, knowing where the stress goes, knowing what to do, if it ends in an N or an S or a vowel, or how to pronounce it when there is when it ends in another consonant. So more about that in the next videos, but at this point this should help you pronounce words that do not have an accent mark and know where to put the stress so that you can pronounce it properly. Ciao, hasta la próxima. Okay. Ciao. Un segundito. There we go. All right. Hasta luego. Adiós.